My name is Ruth, and I am 58 years old. I live alone in a small house in Ohio, the same house where I raised my only son, Kevin. This morning, I sat at my kitchen table, holding a photograph of him from when he was just 10 years old, blowing out candles on a birthday cake I had baked from scratch. Today is his 34th birthday. It has been 3 years since I last held him in my arms. 3 years of silence, of unanswered calls, of wondering what I did wrong. I thought maybe a simple birthday call would be the beginning of healing. I never expected what he would say to me. Before I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If stories about family love and finding your own strength speak to your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. And if you have ever felt rejected by someone, you gave everything to stay with me until the end. What I did after that phone call changed everything. I need to take you back to the beginning to help you understand the depth of what I lost that day. You see, I did not grow up with much. My parents were hard-working people in rural Pennsylvania, the kind of folks who left for work before sunrise and came home after the stars were already out. My father worked at a steel mill and my mother cleaned houses for wealthy families in town. They loved me in their own way, but they were so tired, so worn down by life that there was never much time for conversations at the dinner table or bedtime stories. I remember being a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, sitting on the front porch, waiting for someone to come home and ask me about my day. Most nights I fell asleep waiting. That loneliness shaped me. It carved something deep into my heart. When I found out I was pregnant with Kevin, I made a promise to myself and to God. I swore I would be different. I swore my child would never feel invisible. Harold, my husband, was a good man. He worked as a construction engineer and his job took him away from home for weeks, sometimes months at a time. He provided for us and I never doubted his love. But the truth is, I raised Kevin mostly on my own. When Harold was building bridges in other states, I was the one sitting beside Kevin during his fevers, holding a cold cloth to his forehead at 3 a.m. I was the one driving him to Little League practice, helping him with his homework, and lying next to him when thunderstorms scared him at night. There were times when exhaustion nearly broke me. I remember one winter when Kevin caught a terrible flu. He was burning up with fever, crying for me constantly. Harold was in Texas on a project and could not come home. I stayed awake for 3 days straight, giving Kevin medicine, making him soup and praying over him through the night. When he finally recovered, I collapsed on the couch and slept for 16 hours. But I would have done it 1,000 times over without hesitation. I made sacrifices nobody ever asked me to count. When my company offered me a management position that would have doubled my salary, I turned it down. The job required traveling at least 1 week every month, and I could not bear the thought of leaving Kevin behind. My supervisor told me I was making a mistake, that opportunities like this did not come twice. I smiled and said, my son was my opportunity. I have never regretted that choice. Birthdays were sacred in our house. Every year, no matter how tight money was, I made Kevin's birthday special. I would bake his cake from scratch, always chocolate with vanilla frosting because that was his favorite. I would decorate the living room with streamers and balloons while he slept, so he would wake up to a celebration. And I always wrote him a card by hand, telling him how proud I was of him, how much I loved him, how he was the greatest gift God ever gave me. When Kevin turned 10, he wanted a red bicycle more than anything in the world. It was all he talked about for months. Money was tight that year. Harold's work had slowed down and we were barely making ends meet. But I could not bear to see the disappointment in my son's eyes. So I started putting aside $5 here, $10 there. I skipped lunches at work. I stopped buying myself coffee. After 6 months of saving every spare penny, I had enough. The look on Kevin's face when he saw that bicycle on his birthday morning is something I will carry with me forever. He hugged me so tight and said, Mom, you are the best mother in the whole world. When he turned 16, he needed a car to get to his after-school job. We could not afford a new one, not even close. But I had kept my mother's engagement ring after she passed a small diamond on a thin gold band. It was not worth a fortune, but it was worth something. I sold it without telling Harold and used the money to buy Kevin a used Ford that ran well enough to get him where he needed to go. He never knew about the ring. He just knew his mother made things happen. Kevin used to tell me I was his best friend. On Sunday mornings, we would sit on the porch together, drinking hot chocolate, talking about everything and nothing. He would tell me about his dreams of becoming successful one day, of making enough money to buy me a big house with a garden full of flowers. I would laugh and say all I needed was him healthy and happy. Then Harold got sick. It started with a cough that would not go away. Then weight loss he could not explain. The doctors found lung cancer stage 3. Kevin was 26 years old, then already working in Chicago, building his career in finance. He flew home for the diagnosis, held his father's hand, and promised to come back often. Harold fought for 18 months. I was by his side every single day, helping him eat, giving him his medications, reading to him, when he was too weak to do anything else. In the end, I was holding his hand when he took his last breath. After the funeral, Kevin hugged me and said, "Mom, I will take care of you now. You will never be alone." He flew back to Chicago, and for a while he called every few days. He visited on holidays. He sent flowers on my birthday. I missed Harold terribly, but I still had my son, and that was enough. I refused to sell the house, even though the memories sometimes overwhelmed me. This was where Kevin took his first steps. This was where Harold and I danced in the kitchen on our anniversary. This was where I became a mother. I could not let it go. About 2 years after Harold passed, Kevin called with exciting news. He had met someone. Her name was Diane. He sounded happier than I had heard him in a long time, and my heart swelled with joy for him. He wanted to bring her home to meet me. I spent 3 days preparing for their visit. I cleaned every corner of the house, bought fresh flowers, and cooked all of Kevin's favorite dishes. When they arrived, I opened the door with my arms ready for an embrace. Kevin hugged me tight. Then I turned to Diane. She was beautiful, I will give her that. Tall, with perfectly styled blonde hair and clothes that looked like they cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She smiled at me, but there was something behind that smile I could not quite name. Her eyes swept across my living room, taking in the worn sofa, the old family photographs on the walls, the lace curtains my mother had made by hand. "Lovely," she said. "So cozy." The way she said cozy made my stomach tighten. It was not a compliment. It was a verdict. That first visit set the tone for everything that followed. I had prepared a traditional Thanksgiving dinner, all the dishes I knew Kevin loved. Roasted turkey with homemade stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and my famous pumpkin pie. The table looked beautiful, and I felt proud of what I had created. Diane sat down, looked at the spread before her, and said, "Oh, I am actually on a cleanse right now. I do not really eat carbs or processed foods." She picked at a piece of turkey with her fork, moving it around her plate like it was something unpleasant. Kevin seemed not to notice. He was too busy telling me about their life in Chicago, the restaurants they went to, the friends they had made. Every time I tried to include Diane in the conversation, she gave short answers and redirected attention back to herself or her family. Her father is in real estate, Kevin told me with pride. He owns one of the biggest development companies in the Chicago suburbs. Her family has a vacation house in Aspen. I smiled and nodded, but inside I felt a strange distance growing. It was not jealousy. I have never cared about money or status. It was something else. It was the way Diane looked at my home, at my life, at me, like I was something to be tolerated rather than embraced. The wedding invitation arrived 6 months later. The ceremony would be held at a luxury resort 2 hours outside Chicago. Diane's family was paying for everything. I called Kevin to ask if there was anything I could contribute, maybe help with the flowers or the decorations. He hesitated, then said, "Diane's mom has it all covered, but thanks, Mom." I flew to Chicago for the wedding wearing the nicest dress I owned. It was navy blue with small white flowers, something I had bought years ago for my anniversary with Harold. I thought I looked presentable, maybe even pretty. But when I arrived at the resort, I realized I had underestimated how out of place I would feel. Everyone there seemed to know each other. They air-kissed and laughed about vacations in Europe and charity galas. I stood alone near the entrance, holding my small gift, a handmade quilt I had spent 3 months creating for Kevin and Diane. Each square represented a memory from Kevin's life fabric, from his baby blanket, his Little League uniform, his high school graduation gown. A woman in a silk dress and diamond earrings approached me. She looked me up and down and said, "Are you with the catering staff? I am the groom's mother," I replied. She raised her eyebrows slightly, then walked away without another word. During the reception, I was seated at a table in the far corner near the kitchen doors. I could barely see the head table where Kevin and Diane sat, surrounded by her family and their wealthy friends. I watched my son smile and laugh with people I had never met, people who did not know about the nights I stayed up with him when he was sick, the sacrifices I made so he could have opportunities, the love I poured into every moment of his childhood. There was a time in the program for family speeches. Diane's father spoke for 10 minutes about how proud he was of his daughter, how Kevin was lucky to have her. Her mother added her own remarks about their family values and traditions. Then the MC moved on to the next segment. No one asked me to speak. My name was not even mentioned. Kevin found me afterward looking slightly embarrassed. "Mom, I am sorry. There was a mix-up with the program. We ran out of time." I forced a smile. "It is okay, sweetheart. This is your day. I just want you to be happy." But it was not okay, and I think Kevin knew it. He hugged me quickly and returned to his bride. That night, I flew home alone, clutching the handmade quilt I had never gotten the chance to give them. It sat in the back of my closet for months before I finally put it on the guest bed, wondering if they would ever come visit. After the wedding, Kevin's calls became less frequent. Once a week became once a month. Once a month became occasional text messages. When I called him, he often did not answer, and when he called back, the conversations were rushed. I invited them to come home for Christmas that first year. Kevin said Diane wants to stay with her family this year. Maybe next time. Next time did not come. Not that year. Not the year after. Not the year after that. When their daughter Emma was born, I learned about it through a text message. A single photo of a tiny pink face with the caption, "Meet Emma Louise. Born this morning. Mother and baby doing well." I stared at that photo for hours, crying tears of joy mixed with sorrow. My granddaughter. My first and only grandchild. And I had not even known Diane was pregnant. I sent gifts immediately. A handmade blanket, a silver rattle that had belonged to Kevin when he was a baby, a stack of children's books I remembered reading to him. I never received a thank you card, or even an acknowledgement that they had arrived. I asked Kevin for their new address when they moved to a bigger house. He took 2 weeks to respond, and when he did, it was just the address with no other words attached. 3 years ago, I called to ask how Emma was doing. Diane answered the phone. Her voice was cold and clipped. "We are busy," she said. "I will have Kevin call you back." Kevin never called back. Not that day, not the next week, not ever. I sent text messages that went unanswered. I wrote emails that received one-word replies weeks later. I sent birthday cards and Christmas presents, never knowing if they reached my son or my granddaughter. I spent countless nights lying awake, running through memories, searching for whatever I had done wrong. Was I too poor? Too simple? Too emotional? Had I embarrassed Kevin somehow? Had I said something that offended Diane? The questions circled endlessly in my mind, finding no answers. And then came that morning, Kevin's 34th birthday. I sat at my kitchen table looking at his childhood photograph, and I made a decision. I would call him. I would say happy birthday. I would tell him I loved him. Whatever happened after that, at least I would know I tried. I had no idea that phone call would shatter what was left of my heart. I woke up early that morning before the sun had fully risen. Sleep had been restless, filled with fragments of dreams I could not quite remember. But I felt something in my chest, a mixture of hope and fear that seemed to hum beneath my ribs. Today was the day I would reach out to my son. I went downstairs and made coffee, moving through the familiar motions without really thinking. The house was quiet as it always was now. Just me and the ghosts of happier times. I sat at the kitchen table and looked out the window, watching the sky turn from grey to pale orange to the soft blue of a spring morning. On the wall across from me hung a photograph of Kevin on his graduation day. He stood in his cap and gown, one arm around my shoulders, his smile wide and genuine. I remember that day so clearly. He had leaned close to me and whispered, "I could not have done this without you, Mom. You believed in me when nobody else did." Where had that boy gone? I spent the morning preparing myself for the call. I took a shower, put on a nice blouse, even though Kevin would not see me. It felt important to present myself well, even if only to myself. I ate a small breakfast, though my stomach was tight with nerves. At exactly 9 o'clock, I picked up my phone. I had rehearsed what I would say. Keep it simple, keep it warm. Do not accuse, do not complain. Just tell him you love him and wish him a happy birthday. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. I was about to give up when I heard the click of someone answering. Yes, Kevin's voice was flat, almost annoyed. Not hello, not hi, Mum. Just that single syllable sharp as a slap. I took a breath. Kevin, sweetheart. Happy birthday. I just wanted to hear your voice. Silence. 3 seconds. 4 seconds. 5 seconds. An eternity. Then he spoke. Mom, I thought I made it clear. We do not celebrate with you anymore. The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the table, steadying myself. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to speak calmly. I do not understand. What do you mean? Kevin sighed, the sound heavy with impatience. Diane and I have talked about this. It is better for Emma not to have too many influences. Her family is here. We have our traditions now. There is just no room for all of that. All of that. Was that what I had become? All of that, Kevin, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I am your mother. Emma is my granddaughter. I am not asking for much, just to be part of your lives, even in a small way. She does not even know you, Kevin said. His voice had grown colder. It would confuse her to suddenly have some other grandmother showing up. Some other grandmother. The words cut deeper than any knife could. I tried one more time. Can we at least talk about this? Maybe I could visit just for a day? I would not interfere with anything. I just want to see you. To see her. Kevin exhaled sharply. You do not understand our lifestyle, Mom. You never have. Diane says you are too emotional. It is not healthy for Emma to be around that kind of energy. We have moved on. You should too. In the background, I heard a voice. Diane's voice. Is that your mother? Just hang up already. Kevin cleared his throat. I have to go. Do not call again on holidays. Okay? It just makes things awkward for everyone. The line went dead. I sat there frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear. I do not know how long I stayed like that. Minutes, an hour, time lost all meaning. When I finally lowered the phone, I noticed my hands were shaking. Tears had begun to fall, though I did not remember starting to cry. They dropped onto the table, small dark spots on the wooden surface. I looked around the kitchen at all the photographs of Kevin. His first day of school, his first bicycle, his prom night, his graduation. Every wall held pieces of his life, pieces of our life together. And now he was telling me that life was over, that I was no longer welcome in whatever new life he had built. I thought about all the nights I had spent sitting beside his bed when he was sick. The meals I had cooked, the clothes I had washed, the homework I had helped with, the dreams I had nurtured. I thought about the ring I had sold to buy him a car, the promotions I had turned down to be there for him, the decades of love I had poured into raising this child who now told me I was too emotional, too much, too inconvenient. I did not move from that chair for a long time. I did not eat. I did not drink. I just sat there, letting the reality of what had happened wash over me. Around noon, I heard a knock at the front door. I ignored it at first, but the knocking continued, gentle but persistent. Ruth, a familiar voice called out. Ruth, honey, are you in there? It was Marge, my neighbour of 25 years. We had a routine of walking together most mornings, and I had forgotten completely about it. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and went to open the door. Marge took one look at me, and her expression shifted from concern to alarm. Good Lord, Ruth! What happened I could not answer. The words would not come. I just stepped back, and Marge came inside, closing the door behind her. She guided me to the couch, sat down beside me, and took my hands in hers. Tell me, she said softly. Whatever it is, tell me. And so I did. I told her everything. The phone call, Kevin's words, Diane's voice in the background, the years of silence and rejection that had led to this moment. When I finished, Marge was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled me into a hug, holding me tight. Some people, she said, finally forget where they came from. They get so caught up in who they want to be that they lose sight of who made them. But that is their loss, Ruth, not yours. It does not mean you have to forget who you are. I leaned into her embrace and let myself cry, really cry. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I let the grief pour out of me without trying to hold it back. The days that followed were the darkest I had known since Harold died. Maybe darker because at least when Harold passed, Kevin had been there to hold me. Now I was alone with a grief that had no name, mourning someone who was still alive, but had chosen to be dead to me. I stopped leaving the house. I barely ate. Food had no taste, and my stomach rebelled against anything I tried to force down. Coffee was all I could manage, cup after cup, sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. At night, I would pull out old photo albums and turn the pages, slowly looking at Kevin's face through the years. There he was as a baby, laughing in his high chair. There he was at 5, missing his 2 front teeth, grinning at the camera. There he was at 18, so proud in his graduation robes. And there I was beside him in every picture, always smiling, always believing that this love would last forever. I slept poorly. When I did sleep, I dreamed of Kevin as a child running toward me with his arms open. But when I reached for him, he turned away, and I woke up with my pillow wet from tears. I had cried without knowing. By Thursday, Sandra from work called. I had taken sick days, something I almost never did, and she was worried. "Ruth, are you okay? You never miss work. Are you sick?" "Just a cold," I lied. "I will be fine in a few days." Sandra did not push, but I could hear the doubt in her voice before we hung up. Sunday came and I forced myself to go to church. It was the one thing that felt non-negotiable, the one thread connecting me to something larger than my pain. I put on a decent dress, fixed my hair, and drove to the small Methodist church I had attended for over 30 years. The service washed over me without really penetrating. I sang the hymns from memory, my lips moving, while my mind wandered elsewhere. When it ended, I tried to slip out quickly, but Pastor Thomas caught my eye from across the room. "Ruth," he called out, making his way through the crowd. "Do you have a moment?" I considered making an excuse, but something in his gentle expression made me stop. We walked together to his small office at the back of the church, and he closed the door behind us. "I have known you a long time, Ruth," he said, settling into his chair, "and I have never seen you look like this. What is weighing on your heart?" Maybe it was because he asked so simply. Maybe it was because I had been holding everything inside for too long. Whatever the reason, I told him. I told him about the phone call, about Kevin's words, about the years of being pushed away. I told him about the guilt that gnawed at me, the constant questioning of what I had done wrong. Pastor Thomas listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, his hands folded in his lap. "Ruth," he said finally, "you cannot control how other people choose to treat you. You can only control how you respond. And I want you to hear something very clearly." He leaned forward, his eyes meeting mine. "Your worth as a mother, as a woman, as a child of God does not depend on whether your son recognizes it. You did your best. You loved him with everything you had. What he does with that love is his choice, not your failure." The words settled into me like water into parched earth. I did not respond right away. I just let them sink in. He continued, "Forgiveness is not about excusing what someone has done. It is about freeing yourself from the burden of carrying that pain. But forgiveness takes time, and there is no shame in grieving first. Just do not let the grief become your whole life." I thanked him and left feeling something shift inside me. Not healed, not even close to healed, but a tiny crack had appeared in the darkness, letting in the smallest sliver of light. A few days later, Lillian called from Florida. She was Harold's sister, and we had stayed close even after he passed. She called every few weeks to check on me, and I usually looked forward to our conversations. But this time when I heard her voice, I broke down again. "Ruth, honey." "What is going on?" Lillian asked, her voice filled with concern. I told her everything, just as I had told Pastor Thomas. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I cannot believe this," Lillian said. Her voice had an edge I rarely heard. Harold would be heartbroken. He would be furious. Kevin knows better than this. We raised him better than this. She was quiet for another moment, then said something that caught me off guard. "Ruth, do you remember when Kevin got married? The money he asked to borrow for the wedding expenses that were not covered," I thought back. Kevin had mentioned some last-minute costs, things Diane's family was not paying for. He had asked if I could help out, and of course I had said yes. I lent him $15,000, I said, from my savings. He said he would pay it back. Lillian made a sound that was almost a laugh but held no humor. "And did he?" I opened my mouth to respond, then closed it again. The truth hit me like a wave. He never had. He had never mentioned it again, and I had been so focused on just wanting to be part of his life that I had let it go. I had pretended to forget because I did not want money to come between us. I never asked him for it back, I admitted. "Of course you did not," Lillian said, "because you loved him more than you loved yourself. But Ruth, listen to me. You have given enough. You have given more than enough. It is time to give something to yourself." We talked for another hour. By the time we hung up, something had shifted again. The grief was still there, heavy and real, but alongside it I felt the first stirrings of something else. Not anger exactly, something more like clarity. That night I could not sleep. Around 3 a.m, I gave up trying and went downstairs to the kitchen. I made tea and sat in the dark thinking about everything Lillian had said. My eyes drifted to an old drawer in the corner cabinet, one I rarely opened anymore. On impulse, I went over and pulled it open. Inside, beneath old receipts and forgotten papers, I found a small notebook with a faded blue cover. My journal from when Kevin was little. I carried it back to the table and began to read. The entries were simple, everyday moments captured in my handwriting from decades ago. April 15th. Kevin said his first word today. It was Mama. I cried. September 2nd, first day of kindergarten. He held my hand all the way to the classroom door, then looked up at me and said, I will be brave, Mommy. I waited until he was inside to cry. June 20th. Kevin is 5 today. He told me he loves me more than the whole world. I told him I love him more than the whole universe. He laughed and said that is not fair because the universe is bigger. I read entry after entry, tears streaming down my face. But these were different tears, not just grief, something else. A recognition of all I had given, all I had loved, all that had been real and true, even if it was no longer valued by the person I had given it to. I closed the journal and sat quietly as the sky outside began to lighten. A new day was coming. And somewhere in the deepest part of my heart, a question formed that I had never allowed myself to ask before. When was the last time I did something just for myself? I did not have an answer. But I realized I wanted to find one. The first step was small. So small it might seem insignificant to anyone else. But for me, it felt enormous. I called my supervisor at work and told her I was ready to submit my retirement papers. I had been eligible for 2 years, but had kept working because I did not know what else to do with myself. Now suddenly I knew. I wanted time to figure out who Ruth was beyond being Kevin's mother. The paperwork took a few weeks, and during that time, something in me continued to shift. I started noticing things I had ignored for years. The peeling paint in the hallway, the darkness of the living room with its heavy curtains, the silence that felt less peaceful and more oppressive with each passing day. Sandra organized a small retirement party at the office. Cake, balloons, cards, signed by colleagues I had worked alongside for 3 decades. People hugged me and wished me well, and I felt genuinely grateful for their kindness. But what surprised me most was the lightness I felt walking out of that building for the last time. Not sadness, not fear, just a strange, unexpected sense of possibility. The next week I called a painting company. A young man came over to give me an estimate, and I walked through the house with him pointing at walls. This room, I said, indicating the living room. I want it yellow. Not pale yellow, real yellow, like sunshine. He looked at me with a slight smile. That is a bold choice. I am feeling bold, I replied. The painters came 3 days later. I watched them transform my living room from its muted beige to a warm, vibrant yellow that seemed to glow even on cloudy days. Then I had them paint the kitchen a soft sage green and the bedroom a peaceful shade of blue. While they worked, I began going through closets and drawers. I found boxes of Kevin's old things, his baby clothes, his report cards, his Little League trophies. I did not throw them away, but I packed them neatly and moved them to the attic. I did not need to see them every day. The memories would still exist whether or not the objects were in front of my face. Kevin's old room had become a shrine I never entered. His twin bed still made up with the same comforter from high school. His posters still on the walls. His bookshelf still full of his favorite novels. I stood in the doorway for a long time, looking at this preserved museum of a boy who no longer existed. Then I called Marge. Can you help me with something? Together, we cleared out the room, we donated the furniture to a local shelter, boxed up the books for the library, and took down the posters. When the room was empty, I stood in the center of it and felt something loosen in my chest. What are you going to do with it? Marge asked. I thought for a moment. A reading room, maybe a space for crafts, something that is just for me. Over the following weeks, I transformed that room into exactly what I had envisioned. A comfortable armchair by the window, a small bookshelf filled with novels I had always wanted to read but never had time for, a table where I could work on projects. Marge helped me pick out curtains, light and airy, that let the sunshine stream in. The changes inside the house inspired changes outside. Marge and I spent a Saturday afternoon planting flowers in the front garden. Marigolds, petunias, and passions. Colours everywhere. My neighbours started commenting on how beautiful the yard looked. Some of them had not spoken to me in years, and now they were waving and smiling as they walked past. I discovered something unexpected during this time. I liked cooking again. For years I had cooked Kevin's favourite meals out of habit, even though he was not there to eat them. Now I started experimenting with recipes that appealed to me. Spicy curries, fresh salads, dishes with ingredients I had never tried before. I invited Marge over for dinner and we sat in my sunny yellow living room, eating Thai food and laughing like schoolgirls. One afternoon, I saw a flyer at the library for art classes at the community centre. Introduction to watercolour painting. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 10 to noon. I almost walked past it. Then I stopped, turned around and wrote down the information. The first class was terrifying. I sat surrounded by strangers holding a paintbrush I had no idea how to use, feeling like a fraud. But the instructor, a kind woman in her 60s named Gloria, made everyone feel welcome. "We are all beginners at something," she said. "The only way to fail here is not to try." I painted a terrible purple blob that was supposed to be a grape. I laughed at myself and kept going. By the end of the second class, I had made friends with Gloria and another student named Henry. He was 65, a widower with a dry sense of humour and kind eyes. He made me laugh in a way I had not laughed in years. I also started volunteering at the library, reading stories to children on Wednesday afternoons. Little faces looked up at me as I turned the pages, hanging on every word. They were not my grandchildren. Emma was still a stranger to me, a photograph I had glimpsed once on a phone screen. But these children filled something in me nonetheless. Then Lillian called with an invitation. "Come down to Florida for a week. Stay with me. You need a vacation." I hesitated. I had not travelled alone since Harold died. The thought of airports and hotels and unfamiliar places made me anxious. "I do not know," I said. "That seems like a lot," Ruth Lillian said firmly. "It is a plane ride and a car ride, and then you're on a beach drinking lemonade. You can handle that. You have handled much harder things." She was right. I bought the ticket. Florida was everything I needed. Sun and sand and long conversations with Lillian about Harold, about life, about what it meant to grow older without losing yourself. We walked along the beach every evening as the sun set our feet in the warm water, and I felt something I had almost forgotten existed. Peace. One evening, Lillian turned to me and asked, "Do you feel different?" I considered the question. "Yes, I feel like I have been asleep for a very long time and I am finally waking up." Lillian smiled. "Good. Because you deserve to be awake. You deserve a life, Ruth. Not just an existence." I flew home with a tan on my face and a new energy in my step. The world felt larger than it had in years. There were possibilities I had never considered, paths I had never explored. My life was not over just because my son had decided I was no longer part of his. I had no idea that my new life was about to intersect with my old one in a way I never expected. 6 months after my trip to Florida, Lillian called with news that caught me completely off guard. "Ruth," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she knew something important. "I need to tell you something. I have a friend who works in real estate in Chicago. We were talking the other day, and your sons-in-laws came up." My heart tightened. I had not heard anything about Diane's family in years. I tried not to think about them at all. "What about them?" I asked cautiously. Lillian paused. "Her father's company is in serious trouble. Some bad investments, a lawsuit, economic downturn. My friend says they are hemorrhaging money. The house in Aspen is already on the market." I did not know how to respond. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction I was not proud of, but mostly I just felt tired. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, because Lillian said carefully, "I have a feeling you might be hearing from Kevin soon, and I want you to be prepared." She was right. 3 weeks later, my phone buzzed with a text message from a number I had memorized years ago. A number that had been silent for so long I had almost stopped hoping to see it. "Mom, can we talk?" I stared at those 4 words for a long time. In the past, I would have called back immediately, desperate, grateful for any crumb of attention. Now I felt something different. I picked up my phone, set it on the table, and went back to the book I had been reading. The next afternoon, I finally responded. "I am available tomorrow afternoon." Kevin called exactly when I said I would be free. His voice was different from the last time we spoke. Softer, uncertain. There was none of the sharp impatience I had heard on his birthday. "Mom." "Hi. Thanks for answering." "Hello, Kevin." He cleared his throat. I wanted to check in. See how you're doing. I am doing well, I said evenly. Very well, actually. There was a pause. That is good. That is really good. Another pause. I let it stretch. I was not going to fill the silence for him. Not this time. Finally, he spoke again. Mom, I know things have been difficult between us, and I want to explain. I listened as he talked. He mentioned stress at work, challenges with Diane, disagreements about family priorities. He talked around and around the central issue without ever quite addressing it directly. Then he got to the real point. The thing is, Mom Diane and I are going through some financial difficulties right now. Her father's business has had some setbacks, and it is affecting us too. We are trying to figure things out, and I was wondering if maybe you could help. Just temporarily, just until we get back on our feet. I took a deep breath. Kevin, do you remember the last conversation we had? On your birthday? He was quiet. I continued. You told me I was no longer part of your celebrations. You told me Emma does not know me. You said I was too emotional, that my energy was not healthy for your daughter. You told me not to call on holidays because it made things awkward. Mom, he started. I was not finished. You told me to move on. Those were your exact words. So that is what I did. I moved on. I built a new life. I found new friends, new activities, new reasons to get up in the morning. I stopped waiting by the phone for calls that never came. Mom, I am sorry. His voice cracked slightly. I was wrong. Diane was wrong. We should not have shut you out like that. I appreciate you saying that, I replied. But sorry is just a word, Kevin. It does not undo 3 years of silence. It does not undo being treated like I was nothing. What can I do? He asked. Tell me what to do. I thought about it for a moment. You can show me. Not with words, but with actions. You can reach out because you want a relationship with your mother, not because you need something from me. You can let me know my granddaughter. You can treat me like a member of your family, not like an inconvenience to be managed. Kevin was crying now. I could hear it in his ragged breathing. I did not feel victorious. I did not feel happy about his tears, but I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. I felt strong. I am not going to give you money, I said gently. Not because I am angry, but because that is not my responsibility. I spent my whole life giving to you, Kevin. Now I have learned that I deserve to live for myself too. That is not selfishness. That is self-respect. He did not argue. He just said, I understand, in a small voice. I want you to know something, I continued. I still love you. I always will. You are my son, and nothing will ever change that. But love does not mean I have to accept being treated poorly. It does not mean I have to disappear just because someone finds me inconvenient. I know, he whispered. When you are ready to have a real relationship, I said, one based on respect and genuine connection, not on what I can do for you, I will be here. But I will not wait forever. I have a life to live. I have years ahead of me, God willing, and I intend to make the most of them. The call ended shortly after. I set my phone down and sat quietly for several minutes, letting the emotions settle. There was grief there still. There probably always would be. But there was also something else. A sense of having reclaimed something essential. My voice, my boundaries, my worth. That evening, Marge came over as she often did. We sat on my porch in the cooling air, drinking iced tea and watching the fireflies begin to blink in the garden. How did it go? She asked. I knew Kevin had called. I told her about the conversation, every word. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. I am proud of you. I smiled. I am proud of me too. She reached over and squeezed my hand. You know what you did, right? You taught him something he should have learned a long time ago, that you are not just a resource to be used. You are a person deserving of respect. I looked out at the garden I had planted, the flowers blooming in colors I had chosen, and I thought about the life I had built from the ashes of my grief. I think I said slowly for the first time in my life, I truly believe that. 3 months passed after that phone call. I continued living my new life, painting with Gloria and Henry, reading to children at the library, tending my garden, hosting dinners with Marge. Every day felt fuller than the days before. Then a letter arrived, handwritten in Kevin's familiar scrawl. The return address was Chicago. I opened it carefully, not sure what to expect. Dear Mom, it began. I have been doing a lot of thinking since our last conversation. I could not sleep for days after we talked. I kept hearing your words over and over. You were right about everything. I was wrong, and I am ashamed of how I treated you. Diane and I have had many difficult conversations these past weeks. She is starting to understand what she pushed me to do, and she feels terrible. But the responsibility is mine. I am a grown man. I made my choices. I let someone else convince me that my own mother was a burden. That is something I will have to live with forever. I am not asking for anything. I just want you to know that I am trying to be better. I have been going to counseling to understand why I let myself drift so far from the person I used to be. I have been thinking about Dad, about what he would say if he could see how I treated you. I know he would be disappointed in me. I am disappointed in me. Emma asks about you sometimes. She has seen pictures. She knows she has a grandmother somewhere. Diane and I have started talking to her about you telling her stories from my childhood. The time you saved for 6 months to buy me a bicycle. The time you taught me to ride it and ran alongside me until your legs gave out. The way you always made everything feel safe. I know I cannot undo the past, but I hope maybe someday we can start to build something new. Not because I need money or help or anything else from you. Just because you are my mother and I miss you. I miss who I was when I was close to you. There is a picture enclosed. It is Emma on her 4th birthday last month. I thought you should have it. I love you, Mom. I always have, even when I was too blind to show it. Your son Kevin, I pulled out the photograph. A little girl with light brown hair and my late husband's eyes smiling at the camera with a smear of chocolate frosting on her cheek. My granddaughter. Alive and real and finally known to me. I sat with that letter and that photograph for a long time. Then I went to my writing desk, pulled out a sheet of my nicest stationery, and began to write back. Dear Kevin, thank you for your letter. It meant more to me than you know. I am not going to pretend that everything is healed. It is not. There are years of hurt that will take time to mend if they can be mended at all. But I believe in second chances. I believe in growth. And I believe in you because I know the boy I raised is still in there somewhere. I would love to know Emma. I would love for her to know me. We can start slowly. A phone call here and there, maybe a video chat so I can see her face. We do not have to rush. Real relationships cannot be rushed. I have been thinking a lot about what I learned this past year, about self-worth and boundaries, and what it means to love someone without losing yourself in the process. I want to share one thing with you that I have come to understand. Being a good mother does not mean erasing yourself. It does not mean sacrificing endlessly without ever asking for anything in return. True love, the healthy kind, goes both ways. It requires respect. It requires seeing the other person as fully human with their own needs and limits. I wish I had understood this sooner. Maybe things would have been different. But I do not regret the path that brought me here. I have found friends who make me laugh. I have discovered talents I never knew I had. I wake up every morning now excited about the day ahead. That is a gift I would not trade, even for all the pain that led to it. I forgive you, Kevin. Not because you asked, but because I deserve peace. Carrying anger is exhausting, and I am done being exhausted. When you are ready, call me. We will talk. We will figure out what comes next together. I love you, son. I always have. I always will. Mom. I sealed the letter and walked it to the mailbox at the end of the driveway. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I stood there for a moment, watching the colors shift, feeling the warm evening air on my skin. I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The pain, the rejection, the long dark nights of doubt, but also the awakening, the painting classes, the new friendships, the trip to Florida, the garden full of flowers I had planted with my own hands. I realized something then, standing in the fading light. I had not just survived. I had transformed. I had taken the broken pieces of my life and arranged them into something new, something beautiful, something that was entirely my own. Would Kevin and I fully reconcile? I did not know. Would I ever hold Emma in my arms and read her stories the way I had dreamed time would tell? But whatever happened, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was enough, just as I am, just as I have always been. And nothing anyone said or did could ever take that truth away from me again. The sky darkened to purple, then to blue, then to the velvet black of night. Stars began to appear one by one. I took a deep breath of the summer air, smiled to myself, and walked back inside. Tomorrow would bring new possibilities, and I was ready for every single one of them. To everyone who stayed with me through this story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to set boundaries with someone you love? Have you ever had to choose yourself after years of putting others first? If this resonated with you, please share your experience in the comments below. I read every single one, and I believe our stories can help each other heal. If this touched your heart, please hit that like button so others can find this story too. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more stories about resilience, redemption, and the power of choosing yourself. And share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for listening. And remember, no matter what you have been through, it is never too late to start living for yourself. May you find peace. May you find strength. And may you always remember that you are worthy of love, especially from yourself. Until next time.